And what Paul says in closing there with 2 Corinthians 6 is that in verse 13 he says, now in return for the same, in other words, we've spoken openly to you in love, our heart is wide open, you are not restricted by us, but you are restricted by your own affections, your own love for God, and your own affections towards other people. Now in return, he says, for the same, I speak as to children, you also be open. So that's all he's asking you to do, really. He's asking you to be open to the way of the Master. He's asking you to be open to see the law through the eyes of love, through your own affections. That's the only thing that will restrict you at the end of the day. I can set you rules and regulations every week. I can change them every week, and I can get you jumping through hoops if that's what you wanted to do. What would that do for you? Nothing. By following Jesus simply through the law of love, that is what is the real answer. That is what makes us worthy of the name of Christian, when we love others and try to follow Jesus Christ. That's it. It's not about being good enough. It's not about following those rules and regulations. None of us are good enough to get to heaven. So why don't we drop that idea, you know? And when we look at each other, don't be looking at each other in a critical one. I don't know if he's good enough. I don't know if she's good enough to be a Christian. It's not your problem. It's nothing to do with you. Your issue is to make sure that you are following the law of love. That makes sure that you're looking at people through the eyes of love. And if you are looking at people in that way, then you're getting it wrong straight away anyway. You shouldn't be criticising and condemning other people. That's wrong. So, and we all make judgments, I have to say. It's one of the things that we do as Christians, as human beings. You know, we do compare, we do make comparisons, we do make judgments. So it's impossible not to be judgmental in any shape or form. We have that in us. But we have to strive to love and not be judgmental. That's the important thing at the end of the day. To try and be fair in our assessment of other people in light of what God has done for us. And because we have nothing that would get us into heaven, how can we look at someone else and say, you're not right in this or you're not right in that? It's surely up to God to make those decisions. So we're just going to move on now into the gospel and just see what Jesus says here. And this is a situation where, again, it's all about trusting God. Here we are again. In Mark's Gospel, chapter 4, verse 35, on the same day when evening had come, he said to them, let's cross over to the other side. And so they get in a boat. They get in a boat and they go across the sea. And a great windstorm arose and the waves beat into the boat so that it was already filling. So it's already starting to capsize. It's already starting to get water starting to build up in the boat, you know. It's starting to fill up. And Jesus, he's asleep in the stern. He's merrily having a sleep. He's fine. He's okay. And they wake him up. And they say to him, Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? And it says, then he arose and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. But he said to them, why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And they feared exceedingly and said to one another, who can this be, that even the wind and the sea obey him? So you see, in verse 38 they say to him, Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? And then in verse 14 they say, after he's done the miracle of calming the waves, calming the wind and the waves, they then say, who can this be? So they don't really know who's in the boat with them, not really. Even at this stage, they don't know who's in the boat. Who can this be, that even the wind and the sea obey him? He was the Son of God. He wasn't just a teacher. He was the Son of God. He was God incarnate. That's who he was. And of course they begin to realise that later on. He was God incarnate. And it's all about trusting. And that's why he said to him, how is it that you have no faith? In other words, why are you worrying about perishing? Why are you worrying about your Goliath? Why are you worrying about your mountain? Why are you worrying about the sea engulfing you, or all your problems swamping you? Why are you worrying about all the things that can go on in this world that might hurt your body physically or whatever? Where is your faith? How is it that you have no faith? You have to engage with your faith. Faith is about trust. And trust in the one who was sent. Trusting in Jesus, because he is God and he's the one that can save us to the utmost. And what this section tells us is that when we care, God allows us to fall flat on our face. And when we let God care, we are lifted up. That's the message in that. It's all about trusting God. It's all about trusting Jesus. And there they were. Don't you care? Well, how do you feel? When you're facing all these problems and tribulations and trials, when everything's going on around you, do you fall apart? Or do you say, I've exhausted my resources. I have nothing else to fight with. I can only put myself in the hands of the Master. I can only put myself back in the hands of God and trust God for my future. And God brought me into this world, and God is the one that takes me out of this world. And I have to leave everything with him. It's all about trusting God. When I try to take the reins of my life and I care too much about my life, then those words of Jesus come back into my mind, that if you are not prepared to lose your life, you will lose it. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you're prepared to give up your life to the Lord Jesus Christ, you will find it through him. And as a minister of God, surely we must be prepared to give up our life, in the sense that we must allow God to have the reins, and we've got to trust God for our future. So all those things that Paul said previously, that we have to have much patience. So when people annoy us and cause us problems, we have to have patience. We have to trust God for it, and we have to have patience with people, because we have not got to hold on to our life and our expectations. We have to give those to God. When we suffer tribulations, do we care so much about ourselves that we get into a flat spin? Or do we trust God for it and let him decide the outcome? Can we leave it with him? In needs, when we put our hand in our pocket and we go, oh, there's nothing much there, do we trust God for that? That God will provide? Or are we running around like headless chickens trying to make everything work and get ourselves all worked up and all stressed out? Or rather just go, you know what, I don't have any money at the moment, but I trust God that he's going to provide to extend this ministry, to do what he's called me to do. If he's called me, he needs to provide for me to do that. And that's what happens when we do that. When we try to make it ourselves, it becomes our agenda. We become the caring person who takes on the reins, and God lets us get on with it.